the last one or two or three crucial points of this message. That is, by the nourishing and cherishing and even the sanctifying, that is, the cleansing, Christ eventually will get a church which is his lovely and bright bride, glorious, number one, holy, number two, without blemish, number three. The church that has come out of Christ and that has to go back to Christ, just as Eve came out of Adam and eventually went back to Adam to be one flesh with Adam. And the church will be the same. The church has come out of Christ and will go back to Christ, with Christ as one spirit. And this church, by the nourishing and cherishing and the sanctifying, that is the cleansing by the labor of the water in the Word, will be glorious. To be glorious is just to express God. Glorious means God expressing. We have pointed out again and again, the glory in the Bible means God expressed, God manifested. When the church becomes glorious, this means the church becomes God expressing. Why? Because through the nourishing, cherishing, and sanctifying, the church will be fully saturated with all the divine essence of God. So the church just becomes what? The God-blessing bride. God expressing bride. We all have to see this. Even today, here, every local church must be like this one. God expression. Well, there's no other way that we could be expressing God but by being saturated all the time with all the divine essence of God. To have such a saturation, we need the nourishing, we need the cherishing, and we need the sanctifying, the cleansing of Christ. Number one. Number two, such a glorious church, such a God expressing church is holy. We have seen clearly to be holy is not just to be separated from common things, but to be saturated, permeated with all what God is. So we become holy. And then without blemish. I do believe what Paul means here is like this. You see, you have a jade, a precious stone, jade, J-A-D. A piece of jade may be very clean, yet within it there is some mixture. Any mixture in a jade is a what? Spot. Is a defect. No. When you go to jewelry store, no one would buy a high-class jade with some mixtures in it. If there is some mixture in the jade, and that is the very spot, right? That is the very spot, and that is what? That is a mixture. A mixture. You see, to be dirty is one thing. To be mixed up is another thing. We need to be pure, and we need to be what? We need to be without any mixture. without any blemish. What is the mixture? That is, anything other than God coming into our being. I tell you, that something is a kind of foreign article, as something foreign in a piece of jade. So a perfect jade is spotless, having no mixture. The church someday will be like this. Not only pure, clean, but also without any blemish, without any mixture. Just God himself mingled with the resurrected and uplifted and transformed humanity. I tell you, this is the glorious church that is holy and without blemish. Blemish here simply means mixtures. Without blemish means there's no foreign article, no spot, no mixture. This is the church that is under Christ, nourishing, cherishing, and sanctifying. Thank you. Now, I think the next one must be Anaheim. That is, actually, the church has become a full-grown man in chapter 4. Right? The full-grown man is in chapter 4. And we have to know in these first 4 chapters, what is covered there is the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose. To fulfill God's eternal purpose, there's the need of such an universal man. That is the new man. So when the new man comes in, the full-grown man is here for the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose. In this aspect, the new man is the highest point of what the church is. You see, from a kind of assembly to a kind of a family or house or commonwealth or kingdom, then go up to a kind of a body, and then it reaches the full growth to be the full-grown man to fulfill God's eternal purpose. A man is for doing things. A man is for fulfilling something. This is already completed. Yet, beside the full growth for the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose, there is the satisfaction for Christ. You see, there is the longing, the desire within Christ that needs to be satisfied. Not only so, there is still the need, the defeat of the enemy. Yes, here you have a man, full grown, to do things for the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose. Then how about Christ's satisfaction? On the one hand. Then on the other hand, how about that enemy there? Yeah, here's a man, full grown, to fulfill God's eternal purpose, no doubt. But how about the longing heart of Christ? What is going to satisfy that? And how about God's enemy? So you see, in addition to the first chapters that cover the new man to fulfill God's eternal purpose, you have these 2 additional chapters. One is chapter 5 on the bride, for the satisfaction of Christ's longing heart. And we know, actually, even today in human life, the wife is not for doing things. The wife is for satisfaction. In the whole Bible, the principle is the same. You know, the first time when women is referred to, it says what? It is not so good for a man to live alone. You see, a man needs a satisfaction. And the satisfaction depends upon, or rests upon the woman. So then you have chapter 5 to tell us that how the church, which is the new man for the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose, is also a bride for the satisfaction of Christ. As such a bride, what is needed is not truth, not grace, but love and light. Right? For the fulfillment of God's purpose, the church being the new man, this is the high point. It reaches the top because it is the full-grown man for the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose. But for satisfying Christ, there is the need of another aspect. And this aspect is not for doing things, but for satisfying Christ's heart. So you have the bride here in love and in light. Then, after this satisfaction of Christ's longing heart, still the enemy exists. Then the church, who is the new man, for the fulfillment of God's eternal purpose, and who is also the bride for the satisfaction of the longing heart of Christ, is now the warrior, is now the fighting one to defeat God's enemy, to settle the problem in the whole universe. I feel this is the arrangement of the whole book. Eventually, there will be the new man, there will be the bride, and there will be the warrior. The new man to fulfill God's eternal purpose, the bride to satisfy Christ's longing heart, and the warrior to defeat God's enemy. For God's enemy, what is needed? The might and the sword. Thank you. Now, as you all know, we don't have much time left for the message tonight. We don't need to worry because tonight we are taking some rest, not to take care, not to cover the basic elements, the major factors. We are just coming back to the, common life. Let's talk a little bit about the common life. The human life, about children, parents, slaves, masters. Well, this is common, right? So I don't think our time would be short. I'm even thinking maybe I could finish the message before the time is up. You know, it's easy to talk about the common things, right? The children, the parents, slave, and masters. Actually, I don't think I need to save anything. I don't think I need to say anything. As long as you have the Bible here and you have the outlines, everything's okay. Right? About the children, the parents, and slaves, and masters. But I did have the burden to give you what is the new man, say, by or according to the truth, by the grace, and what is the bride in love and the light. I realized without something you could never understand. But tonight probably you could understand better than I do. Concern the children, parents, and slaves and masters. You know, I never had any kind of slave. I've never been a master. You see, of course, I have a lot of experiences of being a parent and grandparent. I enjoy a lot, and even I suffer more than I enjoy. Okay, let's read these verses. Anyhow, don't forget, regardless how common it is still a part of Ephesians. And so stand a part, Ephesians, between the bride and the warrior. See? If we neglect this part, probably we could not be so sweet, so pretty as a bride. And maybe we will not have the might, neither we will have the sword. We'll be disarmed. Let's read verses 10 through verse, let me see what the last verse. Verse 24. Okay. Let's all read together. Chapters. Sorry. You see, this shows I have no heart here. I don't have it hard. Actually, we should read verses 1 through 9, right? I just skip over from verse 10 through verse 24. We'll have to wait till tomorrow. Let's read the first 9 verses, okay? Verse 1. The children, obey your parents in the law, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may be well with you, and that you may live on earth. And the fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but nurture them in the discipline and admonition of the Lord. The slaves, obey your masters according to flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as to Christ, not with eye service, men pleasers, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the soul, with goodwill, serving as slaves, as to the Lord, and not to men, knowing whatever good thing each one does, this he shall receive from the Lord, whether a slave or a free man. And the masters do the same things toward them, giving up threatening, knowing that both their master and yours is in the heavens, and there is no respect of persons with him. Still, the holy word is good, huh? This is why, whenever we read any portion, we get something. I think I just better go by with the verses. I believe what I'm going to speak will correspond with the outline of the messages. Here, the children. Many versions, they don't have the article here. Of course, you can see even in English language, to have the article here is really somewhat awkward. The children. But the Apostle Paul did use this article here. So this article surely indicates something. And I do believe what was on the heart of the apostle in writing this verse by using or by taking in this article, the children, is this. He considers the children of the church people as something not so common. You see, the children of the believers are not like those little ones in the world. You see, those are common little ones, but the children of the believers are the children. So the children. Language-wise, to put the article here is really awkward. If I don't know so much the English language, I still, by reading it, I can feel it's awkward. Actually, it took my eyes, so I spent some time to look into all the versions. Actually, I do agree that we need to have this article here. We cannot just say, or we should just say, children. Not that way, but the children. The particular children, the particular young ones of the believers' families. Obey your parents. Obey your parents in the Lord. And this means what? This means that the children of the believers should realize in obeying their parents, they should be one with the Lord. In the Lord means what? To be one with the Lord. And also in the Lord means not to obey the parents by yourself, by your own strength, but by the Lord. In the Lord, it means also by the Lord. You obey your parents not by yourself, but by the Lord. And number 3, in the Lord, I do believe implies according to the Lord's word, to the Lord's teaching, to the Lord's scriptures. So, you young ones obeying your parents, you have to do it, number 1, as one with the Lord, by the Lord, and according to what the Lord teaches you. For this is right. You look at the note, right may be translated into jest. So to obey the parent is not only right, but also just. If you don't obey your parents, you are wrong and you are unjust, right? To obey the parents is right and just. Then here, Paul quotes the sixth commandment. Am I right? No, the 5th commandment. The 5th of the 10 commandments. Paul quote here, honor your father and mother. This is a quotation from the law, which is the 5th commandment. And this commandment, Paul says, is the first commandment with a promise. It is not the first commandment. It's the first one with a promise. And the promise is what? The promise is mainly from Deuteronomy 5:16. If you look into Exodus 20:12, there the promise is not so much as Deuteronomy 5:16, which corresponds with what Apostle Paul says here. The promise is this, that it may be well with you. This means what? This means you will be blessed, you will have the prosperity. To be well with is to be prosperous. You will have the prosperity in the material things, and that you may live long on the earth. To live long is to have longevity. So here, 2 things are covered as the promise, prosperity and longevity. These all are blessings in this age, right? In this age. To be well with, it is not just to have material things. I believe implies to have peace, to have a peaceable situation, to live in, things like this, you know. So here, the promise is that if you honor your parents, you will be blessed. Right? You will be blessed in both prosperity and longevity. This commandment is not only the first with a promise, it is also the first one concerning our relationship with man. all the four going commandments from one to from the first to the fourth in the Ten Commandments, all those first four ones were related to God. The first one that is related to man is this commandment, honor your parents. You have to see, to obey is one thing. To honor is another thing. To obey is kind of an action. To honor is a kind of attitude. You may obey your parents without honoring them. You see, you just think, well, they are my parents. Whatever they say, I have to do it. But you don't honor. You see, so you need an attitude, a spirit to honor your parents, not only just to obey. I saw many children obeyed, their parents, but with no honor. With no honor. You have to learn to obey with honor. Verse 4, and do you think you need me to say something about longevity? I believe so. If you are going to live long on this earth, you need to obey your parents with honor. To honor your parents, this will give you a long life. In other words, if you don't honor your parents, you just commit a gradual, slow suicide. Right? You just shorten your life on this earth. If you like to prolong your life on this earth, you must learn one thing, to honor your parents. Not just to obey them, but to obey them with honor. We all like to have a long life, right? In the whole Bible, nearly, there's only one term for us to have the long life. That is to honor our parents. This is a condition. This is a term. To have a long life is conditional. Conditional upon what? Upon your honor to the parents. So I sure like the young ones to hear this. You see, of course, I'm no more young, right? But you are still young. I sure like you to be impressed that if you are going to live a long life, you must, what? You must keep this condition. You must fulfill this term. That is to honor your parents. Now, verse 4, and the fathers. So firstly, the children, and now the fathers. Not the common fathers, but the believing fathers. And the fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. This is not so easy. I will say this to you young people, even to your dear ones who are in the middle age. I tell you, to be mad with the children, to be angry with the children, only destroys. Destroys. It doesn't build up. I tell you, anger, madness is altogether destructive. It is altogether destructive. It is absolutely not constructive. As an old man, I got through, you see, all the years, I sure have learned, and when I look back, I tell you, madness, anger of any parents, just destroy. It doesn't build up. So what? So parents, keep in a good memory. Don't be mad with your children. Don't be angry with your children. Don't lose temper with your children. Never do it. Never do it. It altogether damages. It altogether destroys. But how could we be not mad? How could we be not angry? How could we not lose our temper? I tell you, the only one that can be able not to lose the temper is the one remaining on the cross. When your children do something wrong, don't say anything to them before you go to cross. Before you go to the cross, don't say anything. Don't do anything. When you are going to deal with your children, you must be on the cross. Remain on the cross. Otherwise, you will just be mad, be angry. You will lose your temper to provoke their anger. You see, to provoke is altogether wrong. Don't provoke. Regardless how wrong they would be, what kind of a blunder, what kind of a mischief they have made. Don't be mad. Don't be angry. Don't lose your temper. Don't say anything. But go to the cross there and stay there. While you are remaining there, you say something. Then that will not provoke them. Or provoking is damaging. Why? Promoting stirs up the children's anger. You know, when anyone's angry, nothing good could get it. You see? So don't provoke the children's anger, but nurture them in the discipline and admonition of the Lord. Nurture here, you all know this word. Actually, it, I believe, really means to bring them up. Just like you have this kind of common talk to raise up children, right? To raise up children. To raise up is the meaning of the word here, nurture. Yet, to raise up, it doesn't mean to raise up a piece of wood, right? To raise up a piece of rock. It doesn't mean that. To raise up children means what? Means, number one, you have to nourish them. Number two, you have to give them the education, right? To raise up children, you need to feed them, you need to teach them, you need to give them the necessary education of the human life, of the family life, of the social life. You need to give them the education. And here it says, what? Nurture them in the discipline and admonition. Admonition includes instruction. This means, I have no doubt, Paul referred to the Old Testament in the law. The Lord told the children of Israel many, many times that they have to teach their children. With what? With the Word of God. You see, now we have the Bible, so we have to teach our children with the Bible. You see, with the Bible. We have to teach them. And sometimes we have to give them some kind of a discipline. We have to give them some kind of a chastising. But don't do this with madness. It's not so easy. You see? Not so easy. Anyhow, you parents now have to learn how to nurture the children in the discipline and admonition of the Lord. I think this is all what I can say, and I feel we shouldn't get into it too much because we could spend 3 years, 4 years' time to discuss how to raise up the children. Oh, this is a big question just universally be. No one can end this talk in a lot of different ways. The Americans have the American way to raise up the children, the British have the British way, the French way, German way, and the Japanese way, and the Chinese way, and the Cantonese way, and the Shanghainese way. Too many ways. And you have your own way, I have my own way. Everybody has his own way. And even the husband has a way, and the wife has a way. Right? Too many ways. Too many ways. It's really hard to say, well, I feel I shouldn't get into all these complications. But I like to say a word. A word like this. Number one, how your children will be. What will come out with your children? You have no doubt to do your duty. You have to do your duty. Don't be superstitious. You have to do your duty. And to do your duty, mainly, is not just to teach them, but mainly is to set up an example. You know, the Lord Jesus said, He sanctified Himself for the disciples' sake. For His disciples' sake, He sanctified Himself. I tell you, if you don't have children, you may sleep late, dress up when the sun has risen up already. But if you have children, for their sake, you have to sanctify yourself. If you don't have children, some things you may be free to do it, which will not be sinful. But as you have children, so many things, you should not be free to do it. For your children's sake, you must be restricted. Just like in the principle that the Lord Jesus, for Himself, He doesn't need to be sanctified. He is altogether holy. But for the disciples' sake, He even needs to be sanctified. Parents must lift up a standard, a pattern, an example for the children to imitate. Rather, I would say, to follow. One thing is so clear. If the children, after being born, is put in a Japanese family, after 2 years, this child is speaking Japanese. Right? If the same child is put into an American family, this one speaks not only English, but also the American English, full of American accents. Right? I don't think any parents did teach the children the accent. Right? But the children, I tell you, if you speak American English, surely the children will speak American English. If you speak Japanese English, surely they will all speak Japanese English. Right? They just follow. A kind of pattern there. This is your duty. But listen, you have to admit and you have to believe, regardless how much pattern you would set up, eventually the children would be what? It all depends upon God's mercy. These are two sides. And the two sides seemingly are contradicting. Well, actually, the two sides are not contradicting. You must set up a good pattern. And you must trust in the Lord. Day by day, you have to tell the Lord, the children are not mine. The children are yours. You see, they are your possession. I am just a custody. I just have been entrusted by you with all these children. Lord, I'm just doing my duty. I'm just doing my duty. What they will be, Lord, is up to your mercy. I tell you, sometimes don't be so selfish. You know, sure, we all should have experienced to some extent, you know, when our own children got saved, to be so spiritual. Oh, how heavy that would be. Right? Sometimes when we got to know that the children of our neighbors who are our brothers become more spiritual, I doubt whether you would be that happy. Could you understand me? Your children, their children, the other brother's children, they're all our children in the church. But when your children become so spiritual, you are happy. But when other children become more spiritual than yours, I doubt you would be that happy. I tell you, I can tell you my heart. Our heart, I believe, all would be like this. We want our first boy to be the Apostle Paul, right? And the second one maybe Apollos, right? And the third one, at least an elder. And the fourth one, if not an elder, at least it must be a deacon, right? Suppose my boy is a deacon and your boy is the Apostle Paul. I don't feel so happy. I know what I'm talking about because I'm the same as you are. I've been sick of the same kind of sickness as you are sick. You are being sick. And this proves, even in this matter, we are selfish. I did read a kind of biography, a kind of story. I tell you, mother was praying for her child, that her child should be saved. For years, the child would not be saved. Then one day she said, Lord, what happened? Don't you answer our prayer? Don't you keep your promise? The Lord answered, yes, I keep my promise, I answer your prayer, but you are selfish. If you would stop praying for your child, and now you begin to pray for other child, see what will come out. And from that day, she stopped to pray for her child. She gave up. She said, okay, Lord, the child is yours, not mine. Now, from today, I don't pray for this child, I pray for other child. You know what happened? The story told me, after a short time, her child got saved. Sometimes, just you pray too much for your own children, selfishly. Not to pray for children's wrong. To pray too much for the children selfishly is also wrong. This is a test. Well, I think I better not go too far. It's too much here. Where I am. Now, okay. Now to the slaves. Well, the slaves, again, the slaves. Not the slaves in the unbeliever's home, but the slaves in the saints' home. The slaves, obey your masters according to flesh. Not the masters in heaven, but the masters on this earth according to flesh, with fear and trembling. Fear is a kind of a motive, intention. Trembling is a kind of a attitude. So this indicates such a slave would be very faithful in singleness of your heart. You know, singleness. Just be single. Don't be doubled in your purpose. See, on the one hand, you serve your master, yet you want to get something else. You are not single. You see, you don't have the singleness in your heart. Obey your masters as to Christ. This means what? This means all the slave should consider the masters just as the Lord. Verse 6, not with eye service as men pleasers, you all know this, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the soul. And here it tells us even to do a slave work. If you do it properly, that is to do the will of God. From the soul, that means from the inner being, from your heart. With goodwill, serving as slaves, as to the Lord, and not to men. The point is this. The Apostle Paul, when he was writing this, his consideration was all the time to direct these slaves of people to the Lord. That they have to learn, to serve the masters as to the Lord. One thing I must point out, the slaves in ancient time were the what? Were the sold slaves. The right, even their civil right, even the right to protect their own life, all were sold. So the master had the full right. They are the purchased slaves. Verse 8, knowing that whatever good thing each one does, this, what? That means the good thing you do, this he shall receive from the Lord. If you do the good thing to the master, and the Lord will return you with the same kind of good thing, whether a slave or a free man. The slaves and the masters are the same. If you do something good, then the Lord will return you with the same good thing. The same good thing will be a reward to you. And the masters do the same things toward them. That means do the same good thing toward the slaves. Giving up, threatening, knowing that both the master and yours, that means the Lord Jesus, is in the heavens, and there's no respect of persons with him. In the flesh, we have different persons. Some are slaves, some are masters, but in the eyes of the Lord, there's no difference of persons. Slaves, masters are the same in the eyes of the Lord. Now, in your home, there are slaves and masters, but in the church, there are no slaves and no masters. All are brethren. All are brothers. And this is here mentioned in Colossians 3:11. In this new man, there's no free man, no bondman. In the church, all are free, all are brethren. But as we are still living in this flesh, in our flesh, if we are slaves, we are still slaves. If we are masters, we are still masters in our home. So these are two sides. In the church life, no masters, no slaves. But in the human life, the masters and the slaves still remain. Then you must do your duty as a slave. And you must treat well your slaves as a master. Well, this is all what I can say. Now we all can see what the Apostle Paul was showing us what is the church. He also charged us to take care of our human life in this present age. Right? I think this is quite important. We all have to learn this. Now, I don't think we need some sharings. Do you think we need some sharings? I don't think so, right? But how about we just have a few minutes for prayers? We have to pray that in these days the Lord would open up our eyes to see the real significance of His church. Let's pray this way for 3 or 5 minutes.